brand new church. Hey, those of you that are our first time guests, usually our pastor, who's a lot more handsome than I am, is up here. And those of you that are members, you know that's a lie, and I am more handsome. But today is Story Sunday, and I've got just a short amount of time to catch y'all up on my story and what got me here today. So I'm going to jump right in. I've got one verse that I want you to think about today. It's Proverbs 16:9, and it says that we can make our own plans, but the Lord directs our steps. That's a verse that has been true to me for a long time, and something I'm still learning, that no matter how much I try to write my own story, God is the one that is ultimately the author and directing my story. So I'm gonna get started. My story started 1994. I was born. That was a great year to be a Hogs fan. I grew up in Searcy, Arkansas, home of Harding University and Yarnell's ice cream. That was about it. And my childhood, there was a lot of highs and there was a lot of lows, just like many of you in here, I'm sure. Highs, you know, we had a loving home. We had a warm home. I had two parents that loved us so much, they put us first. I had two older brothers that beat me up and taught me how to be tough a little bit. Not really. I'd usually just run to my parents and tell on them. But I got to have fun as a kid. I got to do just about anything that a kid would do, and I loved it. So there was definitely a lot of highs in my childhood. Some lows. I would say the first time I really started questioning things at the age of 8, I was sexually abused. And I know you're like, hey, well, we're getting deep early. And I'm not trying to get deep or get into that, but I am letting you know that was something that played a part of my life and shaped and impacted me into who I am today. So that carried to teenage years, and teenage years were very similar. There were some great moments and peaks, and there were some low moments and some valleys. And so I made a lot of friends. I played sports. I don't know how. I played basketball, and I had a credit card vertical. If I jumped in the air, all you could slide under my feet was a credit card. And somehow I still played. I don't know how. But I loved teenage years. I made a lot of friends, and there was a lot of highs. But there were also some lows, and I got to see dysfunction. I got to see what divorce could look like and what it would look like in a family. I struggled with my own personal addictions throughout my teenage years, and something that took a long time for me to overcome. I get to the end of my high school years. I quit playing sports. I gained a bunch of weight. Nobody told me that once you stop playing sports, you gain weight. So I gained a lot of weight very fast. And then they started calling me Big Fred. And so that was how that nickname came about. But I graduate high school. I go to Arkansas State on an academic scholarship, if you can believe that or not. And I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I enjoyed college, but it never ultimately made me happy. I would try to go to parties. That high would last a very short time. It was gone. I'd try to go to tailgates, make new friends, do what everybody else was doing. It would last for a very short time. It was gone. In and out of relationships, that joy would last for a very short amount of time, and it was gone. So I graduate college. I want to coach and teach. And so naturally, I end up at J.B. Hunt Transportation. Has nothing to do with coaching and teaching. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I end up at J.B. Hunt, and I look back on these things and God's timing in my life, and this is something I say. Sometimes you don't realize what God's doing until a few years down the road. But I go into an office of 5,000 employees, and I get the privilege of being trained by Trey Odell, who's now leading worship here at our Farmington campus. And so we became best friends. We hung out together. And shortly after, I got invited to brand new church. I remember walking up. I walked in. I knew it was home right away. I knew that everyone was so friendly. It was just different. I hadn't been to church in years. And I came in, and I just loved it. And once again, God's timing. Shortly after that, as a family, we would go through one of the hardest things we would go through as a family. And we got to see what depression and suicidal could look like in a family. And so by God's grace, I was here, and I had this family to lean on, and I had other believers to guide me and steer me. And on March 1st of 2020, I realized that the prayer that I prayed when I was 6 years old, that my grandma said saved me, it didn't save me. And nothing in my life had ever changed. I had never shared that I even believed in God with anybody. There was no fruit in my life. I was still struggling with the same stuff. And I wasn't saved. So March 1st, 2020, right out here in the lobby, it's the location of my tattoo. I prayed, and in my heart, I made Christ Lord and Savior. And when I say that my life literally flipped, it completely changed. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be in church. I'd never wanted to be in church. I wanted to learn. I wanted to read. And then the Lord really started working miracles, because a year later, I married Kaylin, and at the wedding, you hear, I'm standing up there and I keep hearing, how in the world did this happen? And it was coming from my side of the family. And so, yeah, okay, thanks, Dad. And so Kaylin and I get married, and we start doing life together. We start doing ministry together. And shortly after, I tell her that I feel called to student ministry. And she breaks down and she says, I know, but selfishly, I don't want you to do it. And so I leave JB Hunt. I feel this calling on my life. And you can't make this up. 4 days later, she says, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. I know we don't have insurance anymore. I know you don't have a job anymore, but I'm pregnant. And it was the first time in my life where I said, you know what, God, I know you're calling me to this. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know why, but I'm going to do it. And everything since then, the house, the insurance, the money, we've been more than we could ask or imagine. My parents got remarried. Their marriage was healed. I see them serving together now, and I'm closer to my brothers now than I've ever been. And so just the way God has worked through that, it's unbelievable. Front row seat to see students' lives changed every week. And it's just, honestly, it's been unbelievable. But I want to leave you with this before my man Rogelio comes up here. First, there's more to your story. If you're not dead, God's not done. And stop getting mad at the story that God is writing on your life just because you don't necessarily agree with one of the chapters. I look back on chapters in my life that I don't agree with, but I see now how it's come full circle, and I'm leading students who have been through some of the same things. And last, if you feel like your story's not changing, I know for me personally, when it really began to change was when I took a step in faith. I didn't know the why, the how, but I just took that step of faith. And since then, God has just placed piece after piece after piece. And so I challenge you this morning, think about what God's calling you to do that you know you need to step out in faith, even if you don't know what's to come or the answer. Thank you, Brand New Church.